And good evening from Athens, Georgia, and Gainesville, Georgia. Is that where you've
Yeah,
moved off
for
to
for now.
for now?
Yeah.
Uh, Brian Smith, Daniel White here with you, the closers. Unfortunately, not closing out anything too amazing at the moment.
No.
Game five of the NLCS just wrapping up in Arlington within the last little while. Um, I was going to say something if this had happened on time that we were, just past one in Athens in Georgia and just past midnight in Gainesville, and it's a new day. Or sorry, just past midnight in Arlington, and it's
Right.
a new day. It's a new day for the Braves, and they need a new day after that game. But I mean, I can't for a 7-3 game that denied them an opportunity to clinch. There's a lot of good things to say about the early part of the game. It just things went south soon afterwards.
Yeah, and there are a few parts that kind of turned the tide, especially with that Ozuna play at third base, tagging way too soon on that. Good play by um, Mookie Betts in right field. Sorry, my mind's a little bit slow right now. I might need a closer myself here soon.
Uh oh. Oh man. Yeah, I mean the things just really turned away from the Braves in the bullpen, which is kind of what we said was the key to their success to this point of just a couple days ago, and now it's kind of it's to their detriment tonight.
Yeah, and kind of like how Ozuna's play kind of stopped the offense a little bit. The bullpen was just a little bit apprehensive there in the fifth and sixth inning. When you get behind hitters, especially when you're facing the Dodgers, uh, you're pretty much asking for trouble. It doesn't matter who you're facing in the lineup, and that Will Smith versus Will Smith lineup, that matchup right there, I think a lot had to do with Cody Bellinger because you knew that Will Smith, our pitcher, didn't want to face Bellinger with the bases loaded. So on a 3-2 count, even Will Smith, the actor, would have known that a fastball was coming and right out over the plate. And before you know it, 2-1 turns into 4-2.
Yeah, and then got worse and worse from there. Um, Something I was listening to and I was having issues because I actually don't have traditional cable, so I wasn't able to use the Fox Sports Go app because it's not part of my cable package, whatever. Um, but so I was listening to the ESPN radio broadcast toward the end of the game. I was a little bit surprised to hear that the confidence in Kenley Jansen has decreased so much as much as it has this year.
Yeah, and honestly, Jansen looked really good. I mean, a couple of his cutters weren't really moving that well, but usually the spin that the hitters pick up it was very deceiving. So he still got those 3 strikeouts, even though his velocity over the last 5 years has declined. He still looks to be effective in spots, but I don't know if Graterol is at that point to surpass him with the closer's role. But I think that may be your closer starting next season, or just depending on what happens here the rest of the series.
I mean, the ESPN radio broadcasters were speculating that they're going to use Jansen in low leverage situations with a large lead, not necessarily in save situations, which surprises me because he's still, I think, one of the better closers of this generation. Um, if not, certainly not the best, but one of the greater closers of this generation. To see that lack of confidence surprised me a bit. And he did have good stuff and take care of the Braves pretty quickly in that ninth inning.
Yeah, this was the perfect situation to put him in. It was like a proactive rehab without having to send him down. I mean, here's a 4-run lead. Let's see what you can do with it. If you can't do it, then we'll just go to somebody else. So there really was a low risk, high reward there. So that really had to boost his confidence.
Uh, couple things to pick up on. the the Braves hitters only generated 7 hits. Didn't have the pop that Corey Seager did, clearly, as he took the Braves deep twice, and of course that big home run for Will Smith, the catcher Will Smith. But the Braves just never seemed to get anything going in that game. I mean, seven hits scattered. Travis d'Arnaud got 2 RBIs in the game. Christian Pache seems to be a kind of the big name young kid out of the outfield at the moment.
Yeah, he seems to be doing pretty well. I mean, first career home run the other night. Good experience for him. Kind of like what Andrew Jones went through in '96. But with tonight, they rolled early. They got May's pitch count up to 50. They pulled him after two. A run in the first, a run in the second. You got runners on the corners in the third inning. And if Ozuna doesn't tag up early like he does, who knows where that inning leads? Who knows how far that lineup will turn over? And so right then and there, that kind of stopped the offense dead in its tracks. I mean, they've been talking about momentum and how the Dodgers gain momentum and how you gain momentum from one game to the next. Well, what happened right there was how you can lose momentum. So it was a good example right there. But I think with everything, you know, they'll come back. I mean, this was the game that they could afford to lose. This was, when you're talking about percentages, when we won yesterday, we weren't really giddy about today. We were giddy about game 6 and 7
Right.
with Fried and now Anderson on full rest. And when you're facing Bueller, which all the Dodger fans are talking about right there, Bueller has not beaten the Braves yet. Great pitcher, but you got to figure out how the blisters are going to work. And with Fried going on full rest, you still have to have confidence, especially with your lineup going out there again.
Worth mentioning too is that something that historically should make some Braves fans happy out there, certainly makes me happy leading into tomorrow, because I think after tonight's game, things turn around so fast with 7 games in 7 days that they've got to move on pretty quickly, and not let it roll with them. But so for tomorrow, obviously the ALCS will resolve itself with Game 7, and if the Braves win tomorrow night, it'll be the first time since 1992 that both pennants were clinched on the same day, and of course, 92 being a very, very famous day in Braves history.
Oh yeah, that was a great year with Sid Slide. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine if we had scored 5 runs in the ninth tonight that way? That would have been so cool. But now, tomorrow, we're the away team technically.
Right.
Um, but when you look over at the Astros and the Rays, you got to wonder if the Rays can recover from this. I mean, the Rays have great pitching, but they really never had the offense all year. So now you see their pitching starting to slide a little bit. Snell got rocked in the middle innings today, so it's all or nothing tomorrow. And how do you mentally prepare for that game? But with the Braves, I mean, you saw how they responded after the 15-3 game. They were having dance parties before the game, so I'm not too worried about the 7-3 loss tonight. We know they bounced back very well against these Dodgers, and it still sets up pretty well. We've seen everybody. The Dodgers aren't going to be surprising us at all, so it's just going out there and a matter of executing.
I think momentum. Momentum, I think, is still on the Braves side because the Dodgers still have to win 2 more games before the Braves win one. Um, I think that again. I think from what you say about the dance party before Game 4, I think that Snicker and the Braves are doing a good job staying loose and not letting the bad games get them down. Obviously,
And you remember I remember Game 5 of the World Series back in '95 when we had a 3-1 lead, and Greg Maddux got rocked by Albert Bell in Cleveland, and then they're returning home, and that's when you had the David Justice thing. The more pressure, they'll run us out of Atlanta if we don't win. So that's kind of the similar scenario that they're facing right now, but I think that the offense that we have is much better, and Fried is a Tom Glavine type pitcher, and go figure he's going in Game 6 tomorrow. And the Dodgers can't hit lefties as well as they do righties, so if it's going to happen, it's going to happen tomorrow. I think the highest percentage will have to be in Game 6.
and I think it's and not to mention the fact that uh, in the Fox broadcast booth there will be a certain pitcher that was on that 95 team in the broadcast booth tomorrow night, as he's been all series.
Yep,
So,
John
so
Smoltz.
yeah, he yeah, it that must it's interesting to have him in the booth, but I mean, for as many times as Joe Buck and Tim McCarver called Cardinal series from when they, when they both had deep associations with the Cardinals organization, I think John Smoltz has been a great broadcaster thus far.
He's kind of like what Tony Romo is to the NFL. Very good insight. I don't know. I think Tony Romo may have him on the enthusiasm.
Yeah, for sure. Um, anything else from this game or from either of these games tonight that you think bears mentioning? I think that the Braves again, obviously, the last number I saw was 1-7 with runners in scoring position, and that didn't change in that scoreless ninth inning either. But their ability to capitalize is troublesome.
Yeah, I think the one good thing that you can take out of this is that you basically got into the Dodgers bullpen in the third inning, so you're taxing them. It's
Right.
it's a it's a marathon, so they've kind of worn them out for another game, and that's kind of what I was hoping for today. If we didn't win, that we would at least, see a little bit more guys. I think the one guy we've seen the least is Joe Kelly, but at the same time, it's just nobody's going to surprise us. I mean, if they want to throw Alex Wood, I mean that's totally fine. But once again, it's all on the starting pitching tomorrow. Who's going to save Bueller if he gets into trouble? And we know it won't be Dustin May because he's already thrown almost 60 pitches. And when you head to Game 7, if there is a Game 7, you have to decide: do the Dodgers want to throw Gonsolin or do they want to throw Urias on 3 days rest? So there's more questions on the Dodgers side, and I think the Braves can still breathe a little easier even though they lost tonight.
I think that the Braves definitely are lined up a little bit better pitching wise. There was again the ESPN radio broadcast mentioned whether or not Kershaw would be available to pitch in Game 7, in kind of like the role that Bumgarner took against Kansas City a few years ago in the World Series, where he pitched. I think it was two starts and a relief appearance in that series.
It was, but I think Kershaw may be a little bit older now than when Bumgarner was when he did that against the Royals, so age could be a factor. But I'll throw one out here for you. 2001 World Series, Randy Johnson, Game 7, when he came in after starting the night before.
That was some serious pitching, I tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, uh,
Those soreness is thrown out the window. You're in there to get them outs.
he was just angry. He came in angry and got the outs. Obviously, they got the win.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe he was the winning pitcher of Game 7, was he not? Because Arizona did score 2 in the bottom of the ninth.
I think you're right. If I'm not mistaken, I know that it was I know that it did end last minute. Like you said, in the bottom of the ninth. And I've got that in front of me. Yes, winning pitcher was Randy Johnson. The loser, Mariano Rivera. If that's not an interesting one-loss combination.
Yeah, right. Let's see. And believe it or not, Randy Johnson was also the winner of Game 6 as well.
Yeah, he was ended up being 5-1 in that postseason. So that was pretty. That was some good pitching, and it was November 4th, the first World Series to end in November. At the
Right.
time, there's been more since then, obviously, but
Right. And I think the one thing that kind of gets overshadowed here in Game 5 was the performance from AJ Minter.
before the game, I read that he had never pitched more than 2 innings in a single game at all, and then he went 3 innings, pitch or gave up one hit, 7 strikeouts. That was more than what Snitker could have asked for from him. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say that it was the first time in Major League history that a pitcher got his first career start in the postseason. That
Yeah, I mean it was. I mean he did exemplary pitching, and I when I saw that that's who they were going with, I commented to you privately that I thought that kind of was scary. It was a bit scary. I mean, it was on the head of a guy that had never started a game in the majors at all.
right.
But I mean, he pitched very well. I mean, obviously, he watched his lead evaporate um, from the bench, but I mean, he threw incredible. Seven of his 9 outs were strikeouts.
Yeah, and with the Braves using Matzik there afterwards, I mean, it really should give the Braves hope going into tomorrow with Fried going, because you saw how difficult it was for these Dodgers left-handed hitters to hit these left-handed pitchers for Atlanta. Bellinger can't hit the inside fastball high, or and he let her up. And it seems like he's getting handcuffed, and Muncy is not doing too good of a job of staying off the breaking pitches. So, when they brought Webb in and they had that hit by pitch, that was actually hitting the fist of the bat instead of the hand, they should have kept it as the hit by pitch, because Taylor doubled after that, and then Seager bombs one a couple batters later. It just shows you how well Dodgers can hit these righties compared to these left-handed pitchers. So, tomorrow has to be the day for that reason. But I still have faith in Ian Anderson if tomorrow they don't get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's plenty to be optimistic about for Braves fans. I had people, because this was my first day off from my day job in this series. Um, or and so I had friends messaging me telling me to go back to work because they played better when I was working than when I wasn't. But and tomorrow I am working, so hopefully that'll work out well for the Braves.
And that
But
game, I think that's a 4 o'clock start tomorrow around there.
oh, that's one thing I haven't followed. Have they been alternating the early game versus the late game
In
between the?
Yes, in game one they did. They had Tampa Bay and Houston as the late game, and I think games 2 and 3 for Atlanta were now the late games, and then today was the really late game, and now we're going back to the 4 o'clock start.
So that will certainly be interesting. As again, the turnaround from a game that wrapped up just about 1 o'clock Eastern time, uh, and having my consideration goes to a guy like Travis d'Arnaud going back behind the plate in less than 20 hours, or well, like 15 hours from
And
start to finish.
so, do you believe this is going to benefit the short time? Is it going to benefit the Braves and their psyche more, or is it going to benefit the Dodgers and their willingness to try to keep this momentum going?
I think for the Braves, I think the Braves will spend the next, now 14 hours plus angry, and I think that you know, over time, just as human nature for anger to dissipate and the raw emotions to dissipate. I think that with 14 hours, I think that they will come out fired up in at 4 o'clock tomorrow. They'll be ready to go. The
I
Braves.
think
So
so. Yeah.
I think it benefits the Braves.
I think it does too. You don't have to sit on it too long. You want to get back out there, and I still think the Braves are the better team in this series. Just based off the fact. Now, one thing that I thought was fascinating this year was how loosely they threw about how great the Dodgers were based off their record, but all they did was stick in the NL West and the AL West. They never really had any experience outside of their division other than the Milwaukee Brewers for 2 games. So it was very hard to gauge on who was really the better team. But when they matched up with Atlanta, I was like, whoa, this is definitely different than years past. A deeper lineup. Just imagine if we had Soroka still, the staff would be on point. But I think Atlanta also has the better bullpens, and I think these last 2 games, the bullpens are going to dictate who wins these games if there happens to be 7 of them. So right now the Braves have the advantage in that they never use Chris Martin and they never use Melanson, so they could ask Fried to throw about 100 pitches or so, or go maybe a little bit beyond that just to get 7 innings in, so they can do the easy transition and see if they can wrap it up tomorrow.
And conversely, going at that from the other side, the Dodgers used Kenley Jansen, and they're not in the habit, again, just based on some of the things I heard in media reports and things like that. They're not in the habit of using him on back-to-back days this year, so he's unavailable to pitch tomorrow is the assumption. So, I mean, and they knocked out, what was it, a total of 7 pitchers? They marched a total of six, 7 pitchers out of their bullpen tonight.
I believe 6 pitchers going 8 innings. Yeah, or not 8 innings because May. Well, I guess May would count as a bullpen guy, but yeah, 7 innings from six
Yeah,
pitchers.
from 7 innings from guys that weren't their starters.
Right.
They sent it almost looked like an all-star game, to be honest with you. Not in the quality of pitchers necessarily, but they trotted out May for 2 innings, Kelly for one, Treinen for two, Baez for one, and then Gonzalez, Gratterall, and Jansen for one each. So
And so this is basically survival mode for the Dodgers, and they'll have to do that for the next 2 games if it does go 2 games. But it makes you wonder now: does that change their idea about Jansen going tomorrow if they have to use him? So it's possible, depending on the situation.
and the that would be a great thing for the Dodgers to pull. Strategically, Jansen is unavailable to pitch, but then that doesn't preclude him from being trotted out of the bullpen unexpectedly. Obviously the Dodgers are good for World Series and playoff surprises. 1988, trotting Kirk Gibson out of the training room and into a home run, but it'll be interesting to see.
Oh, it'd be very interesting to see, especially with the confidence boost they gave him tonight, striking out the side in the ninth. But then again, this wasn't Acuna, Freeman, and Ozuna. This was more towards the bottom of the lineup with Swanson and Camargo, and I think Riley batted in that ninth inning.
He did.
Yeah,
Right. He struck out, obviously.
and no surprise there.
he with Riley, it's kind of feast or famine.
Oh yeah, he's basically like a right-handed Max Muncy in a way.
Right.
You'll either get a walk out of him, you'll get a strikeout, or if he makes contact, the ball's going to go 450 feet. So it's just take your pick of the three.
And looking at the Braves, looking at the Braves order from tonight, just in terms of batting averages, a guy like Acuna, who's only hitting 176 in the playoffs, Darno hitting 133 but having 2 RBIs tonight. They've got a lot of guys. Well, and of course Riley and Swanson hitting in the low hundreds or mid hundreds, mid 150 and 158. I think that the Braves have some guys that are due to wake up, and the law of averages says that somebody like Acuna is not going to be quiet forever. Somebody like Riley may, but law of average does seem to indicate that the Braves might actually get something out of those guys in the next couple days.
And giving the history of Acuna and Buehler, I'm going to make a call for tomorrow for Acuna. I'm going to say he puts one in the second deck in left field tomorrow against him.
That sounds like a good call. And any pitcher that, anytime a pitcher faces Acuna at the top of the lineup with his illustrious history of leadoff home runs, before they're even breaking a sweat, he could have the Braves ahead.
Oh yeah. I think he can use that chain as a batting weight, like a donut. Seems like it's weighing him down just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. But other thoughts? I mean, other expectations. I think it's interesting that this set of games is the first, or these playoffs are the first time that people are actually getting to see this beautiful new ballpark of the Rangers. Yeah,
right.
Having been in the old one, what are your impressions TV wise?
Well, I may actually be in Dallas in the next couple days, depending on what the Braves do. But that ballpark plays to the pitchers big time. Back at the old ballpark across the street, it's funny because the wind would always blow in, but the building was constructed in such a way where the wind just circulated, so it would kind of hit the seats behind home plate and push back out. And so whenever you got it up into that jet stream in right center field, those balls would carry a long way. Here, it seems like not like you saw tonight with I believe it was Muncie's shot that to dead center. It just seemed like it died out there. So it's definitely going to play to the pitchers. If if the Braves do make a World Series appearance, I may actually be out there for either games 1, 2, or 3 to kind of check it out myself. But from the TV, it actually looks like a really nice ballpark, very spacious. It's not as intimate as you would see with Truist Park. I mean
Right.
that I could tell from the just from watching it on TV.
Well, and I think it's and again, typically in a typical season, you may not have the Braves play in Arlington, um, and I think when you talk about the you know the Braves have got to in a way hope that it's not the Rangers that make it. I'm sorry, not the Rangers, not the Astros that make it on. The Rangers aren't going to make it for another decade, maybe.
Yeah,
But
John Daniels destroyed that team.
yeah, um, I think that if you, but I think that if you see if you that the Astros obviously have an advantage over the Braves. If they are coming into that that World Series, if they make it because they've actually played in the ballpark, a lot more games than the Braves have
Right.
over the course of this past 60-game season.
Well, so have the Dodgers too.
That's good. That's true. That's true. Um,
But the thing about the Astros is that they have the experience. And when you have a team kind of like what you had with Boston back in '04 when they had a 3-0 deficit in the LCS and they come back and win all 4 games, they're going to have a sense about them that they can't be beaten. And you saw what happened in the World Series that year. They swept past St. Louis, no problem.
right. Yeah, it's
So,
going to be a challenge.
oh, very much so. So hopefully Tampa will win tomorrow. I mean, it was supposed to be my friend and I. She was supposed to go. She lives in San Antonio, and with me living here, if it was a Rays and Braves World Series, we were going to go get tickets and go see one of the games up there. Get the hats and everything like that. But now it doesn't look so promising on their end. For us, I still think we're looking okay.
Yeah, I think we still, obviously we have the advantages we've been talking about our pitching. I think is stronger overall than who the or has better momentum overall than the two pitchers that the Dodgers will send out in Game 6 and 7. But
Right.
so I think it looks, and obviously I think the Braves. I mean, they've only lost 2 games in this postseason, but they've they followed up their first loss in the postseason with a victory. So there's no reason not to expect that they'll do the same tomorrow.
Yeah, and when we've got a starter going tomorrow who's going to go more than 3 innings, and it's going to still put more pressure on Buehler and the Dodgers to keep the Braves off the board, which is almost impossible to do. I mean, because you got Game 1 where they scored 5, and they scored 8, and then in Game 4 they scored 10 when Kershaw was pitching. So there's no pitcher that these Braves can't hit. So uh, advantage still goes to them until the Dodgers prove otherwise. I think they're going to wear down tomorrow, and this series is going to be over tomorrow.
And you called a 6-game series, I believe, at the beginning.
Yeah,
So it's still lining up to be that way.
yeah. It was going to be a back and forth, and I honestly, at the beginning, I thought the Dodgers were going to win the series because of who they had, and we didn't know that Kershaw was only going to pitch 1 game in this series. Because when you go Game 4 now, you bring back Kershaw on 2 days rest. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And we all know the playoff Kershaw. He's not really getting a fair shake on that, but he's a different postseason pitcher than he is during the regular season.
Yeah, and especially with the obviously there's still lingering concerns about the health of Buehler and of Kershaw with the blisters and the arm strains and
And the
everything
back
that
spasms, yeah.
back spasms, yeah, everything that they've got going with them. So I'm going to call advantage Atlanta as well. Um, I think that tomorrow could be so. To move on to just general sports talk for a second, just because I think that it's worth it. Um, Tomorrow could be a very big day and a big Saturday in sports here in Georgia. Obviously, we're on the 28th anniversary of Sid's slide.
Yep.
With the Braves having a chance to clinch. The uh, the Bulldogs are heading into Tuscaloosa to play this little tiny college over there in Tuscaloosa with a coach nobody's heard of.
Yeah, who just tested negative today for the COVID.
Yeah, after testing positive a couple days ago.
Yes, so it could have been a false positive now that is now a negative, and he could be on the sidelines tomorrow. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
And
and I think and having suffered through a Steve Sarkisian offense with the Falcons, I would feel a lot better with Saban on the sidelines than I would Sark.
yeah, and I like our Alabama players when the Falcons draft them and not before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let's not like we don't like them tomorrow, but I don't know why, but I mean, the last few times we played Alabama, we had beat them. We lost to them in overtime
Right.
in the football playoff, and we lost to them by one touchdown in the SEC championship 2 years ago. I feel pretty decent about the game
I
tomorrow.
do too, and it was kind of the same reason I felt decent about the Braves going into the series here against the Dodgers, because you've had teams with history, but the teams that we've been following have started to build and become, more well-rounded. I mean, you've got a Georgia defensive line that manhandled a Tennessee O-line that was considered one of the best in the nation last week. You now have. I'd like to see how Mac Jones works well against a top five defense. Um, but I think at the same time you feel like LA lost a step, but Alabama has now lost a step. I don't think their defense obviously isn't as great as it used to be. You saw what happened with Mississippi State. They put up 56 points on them or something like that, 48, 56.
Yeah, Ole Miss last week was a mess.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be an exciting day in sports, really. And it could be a really positive day here in Georgia, hopefully. Uh,
It,
Crossing
it,
every finger and toes I've got.
I mean, it's going to be great to see how Stetson Bennett, performs against, a team that's picked to once again go after Clemson for the national title. But yeah, tomorrow, Georgia fans, fans of Georgia sports in general, this could be one of the best days that you have had in a very long time, possibly years, or it could be the same old nightmare that you were accustomed to. Yeah,
Being a Georgia, I'm a latecomer to being a Georgia sports fan, obviously. Just in the last 14 years, and that being a fan of sports from the state of Georgia, and it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day anytime something good's about to happen.
yep. That's why I'm not getting my hopes up right now about this LA Dodgers series, even though we're up 3-2. The experts are going to be back on the LA bandwagon tomorrow because they won today, and everybody loves Coach Saban, and so they're not going to really pick against him since he has not lost against any of his understudies. So odds are still they're still stacked against us, but I think we have a great shots tomorrow to be happy about something.
So just a small bit of of intrigue. The Georgia game tomorrow kicks off at 8 o'clock Eastern time. 4 hours after things wrap up, or hours after first pitch in Arlington. We could be riding a high or a low right into that game without much pause.
Yeah, and there's actually a good storyline going on right now in Arlington when it comes to the Braves and the possibility of clinching the pennant tomorrow. You got to think of some of these couple of players on the Braves, and now you look at the coaching staff from the Braves, and you look who's coaching third base for Atlanta right now.
Yeah, Ron Washington. I've heard that there's a lot of people in Arlington rooting for Wash because of his connections to the Rangers.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate the circumstances for which he left because he had some personal issues he had to take care of, and sometimes that's bigger than baseball. And so nobody's holding that against him over there, which is a good thing. And at the same time, you look into that Braves bullpen. You have Darren O'Day, and you have Chris Martin. And for O'Day and Washington, they were part of that 2011 team you know that suffered a crushing defeat in Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, the David Freese game.
Yeah, so definitely all of them have a shot of redemption in Arlington, which is
Yeah,
a pretty
fitting.
special, or fitting and special for all involved. I think that I think it's an interesting story, and I think if you're for the Rangers fans, honestly, if they look at what's happened to them since Washington stepped down, they've gone through since he resigned. It's been Tim Bogar in the interim, Jeff Bannister, Don Wakamatsu in the interim, and now Chris Woodward, and their fortunes have gone down the toilet.
Yeah, and everybody was like, John Daniels didn't do this. He was the architect behind the 2010, 2011 American League title teams, and people forget that that was Nolan Ryan after he had bought the team from Hicks, and it, Nolan Ryan knows baseball. And then when Nolan Ryan left and went to the Astros, what have happened to the Astros?
Astros
And
got good.
yeah, and John Daniels tanked the Rangers, and now the Rangers are going to be lucky to be playing for anything over the next 5, 6 years, and who knows, maybe they'll get rid of Joey Gallo. He'll go to a contender at some point, probably the Yankees.
But that's how these things go.
Yeah,
The contenders end up going to or the guys looking for their shot go to the Yankees. Although I've got to say that if or Alex Anthopoulos wants to shell out money, and if Liberty Media wants to shell out money, I think that the Braves are going to be an attractive option for a while too. They've got a bunch of young players, a bunch of young, really good players that are going to shine for a long time. This could be the start of something really big.
yeah, and regardless of what happens this year, I mean, when you go into opening day next year, you've got a starting rotation of Soroka, Fried, Anderson, possibly Bryce Wilson or Kyle Wright. So the consensus here is, do you want to pay Ozuna a boatload of money, or do you want to bring someone like Trevor Bauer over to solidify that staff? I mean, that would be insane with that pitching staff.
That would be insane. I think that, and I mean, in the Braves kind of do have a history of having a solid young core, and then having you know a wily veteran that can still throw, obviously, shoring them up over the
Right.
years. As that in that kind of might be an ace and a long term ace somewhere else, but is kind of just the wise arm in the rotation
Right.
in
And
Atlanta.
and when it comes to Ozuna in terms of him personally, um, the rest of this LCS is going to be a good audition for him. Possibly the World Series if they make it that far. So you got the whole world watching. He's gonna demand a lot of money, and it's just a matter of is he gonna pull through and show that he's worth that kind of money? And he's had his flashes of brilliance here in the postseason, but he's kind of tapered off outside of what happened yesterday with that 2-homer game. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent, and I think everything's going to be just fine for him and the Braves.
Yeah, he's considering that he was kind of suffering in Miami for a number of years. He's kind of risen pretty well to get to be able to compete for championships with the Braves and Cardinals before that.
And can you imagine that Miami team now if they had held together? Because not only did you have Ozuna, but you also had Derek Dietrich and you also had Christian Yelich at the same time. I mean, that would have been a nasty lineup.
But quite honestly, Marlins ownership, whether it's been Wayne Huizenga, Jeffrey Loria, or Derek Jeter, is not exactly known for patience in their building. They kind of go for it all and then blow it up, and then go for it all and then blow it up.
Yeah.
Um, all the players that have gone through Miami and gone elsewhere and succeeded is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's been very crazy. So it makes you wonder what's going to happen to guys like Alcantara, Sixto, and even Aguilar at first base. I mean, hitting the ball pretty well. He's kind of like a Nelson Cruz kind of build. So are they going to build off that, or are they just going to kind of slide back and be on the, in a retrograde motion again?
It's kind of hard to tell. It doesn't seem like just I can tell. Like, I'm a Tigers fan, this, and watching the Tigers go through their rebuild, watching the Braves when they did, you could kind of even when they were losing a lot of games, you could see a
Right.
light somewhere in the tunnel, and it just, I don't see that with the Marlins yet.
There is a light. It's just an oncoming train.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Um, I mean, it seems like they have their success once every half a
Ever,
decade.
hmm And it's kind of amazing that Atlanta's been in what they've been in Atlanta since '66, and they only won world championship, and then here come the Marlins winning it 4 years in their existence, and then doing it again 6 years later. It's like that's not fair.
Oh, at least the Braves knocked out their postseason series winning streak.
Yep,
So
we
that
are
can't be talked about anymore.
we are part of that blemish on their record now, and that's why I'm kind of getting up about Fried and Anderson going in these back-to-back games if necessary, because they were part of the reason why they were so historic against the Reds, and then the Marlins shutting them out 4 out of 5 times to start the postseason. These guys have some good stuff. I mean, when you look at Anderson's changeup as opposed to his fastball and curveball, he throws it from the same slot. He hides it well. So, these guys don't know what's coming, and his changeup is so slow. These guys are already out in front of it before they can even make up their mind to, check it or not. But man, they showed that graphic on Fox, and I don't even know how the Dodgers are going to get through these next 2 games with a tough lefty and a righty who's going to get you out in front more times than not.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely the Dodgers have their work cut out for them. I wouldn't be resting too comfortably after tonight's game, even with a win.
Right.
But I was going to say something else. Something you said triggered me into a thought, and then I lost it.
Let's see, what was it that we said? We had the light at the end of the tunnel was possibly an oncoming train.
But well, carrying off of that analogy, I think that the oncoming trains are in the person of Max Fried and Ian Anderson, based on their
Right.
postseason success to this point for the Dodgers.
Right. And so, for the Braves, how to close out a series. I mean, we've seen it in the past, like I said, in the 95 series. But then again, you look at the 1996 NLCS, and they could have learned from that too if they kind of go back in history, because they know St. Louis had a 3-1 series lead, and then Atlanta just took it to them after that. So definitely different makeups for each team. So not saying that's going to happen. I mean, it's possible that LA's a good team, but Atlanta's a team that's only lost 3 in a row or more just one time this year, and that was against the Rays and the Yankees. No, it was the Phillies. It was the Phillies. But
And some
we know where the
and
Phillies are at.
Oh yeah. And something that I will say for the Atlanta organization and really baseball in general, just kind of looking forward a little bit, just because obviously no matter what anybody else does, there's a maximum of 9 games left of the Major League Baseball season.
Yep.
Um, and when you look at sports like basketball and hockey, which staged very successful playoffs, they did, considering the circumstances that they were working under, but they both wrapped up in early October,
Right.
when that would typically be the start of their seasons. In the you know so in where they'll be pushing off to December, January, which is still a shorter off season
Right.
than most of them are used to. The Braves are, no matter what happens, this series is going to be wrapped up by the end of the month, and baseball gets to kind of be on a little bit more of a normal track. Um, Obviously, things were a little bit ugly for a while with the number of COVID tests that shut down the Marlins and the Cardinals were the big examples. But the Braves have managed to make it through the bulk of the season pretty healthy from that perspective.
Right.
Obviously, there was some issues in early summer camp with Freddie and some other guys, but I think that baseball is set up to. I mean, they'll have a normal off season, and I think that baseball's set up to do very well because of
Right.
that. You bring, you know, 30, and I'm guessing that basketball and hockey, where the non-playoff teams have been out of action since March 11th, you're going to see teams clamoring to get back in there pretty quickly. And you'll have this disparity where the teams like the Lightning have only been off for 2 months, while teams like the Red Wings have been off for 9. And
Yeah.
it's going to be that disparity is going to be interesting to see. But I think that the fact that baseball has managed to stage the season and keep their normal schedule, I think, is going to be a benefit to all 30 of those teams.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, you talk about fresh legs. Detroit's gonna have some fresh legs going into this season.
I mean, by the time the NHL gets by the time the NHL gets going again and the Red Wings get going again, Steve Yzerman may feel good enough to play. They've been off for so long. Um,
I think Eiserman deserves a ring for constructing that team in Tampa. Honestly, I mean, I know he's only a year removed, but he was a major player of building that team. And I know they were delayed a year; they should have won it last year. But I mean, with this year, I mean, you have to make a little bit of a consideration for the guy because he was the architect behind that.
It does. I mean and I mean that architecture that he's led is definitely a positive in the mind of Red Wings fans. I mean, everybody thinks that Yzerman's going to be the savior anyway because he saved the team once before, even though it's been almost 40 years, surprisingly. But to see how he constructed and led the Lightning to where they are, gives hope for the Red Wings and their fans in this dark, dark time.
Yeah, and you need a guy like Eiserman because that man is very headstrong. He's very I think he's very philosophical. I think that's why you see him succeeding in roles in the front office. While you see guys like Wayne Gretzky kind of crumbling when it comes to head coaching and things like that. Just it doesn't always translate off the ice, but in Eiserman's case, I mean, oh yeah, I mean he's been successful in every aspect of the game ever since he's been involved.
I read an article recently about the scouting interviews that they did the pre-draft interviews that they did, and Iserman was doing like they were talking about one of the prospects said that Iserman would never have his camera on or you know have his microphone on during the interviews, and it was Chris Draper and the scouting staff leading the interviews. And somebody asked Iserman, well, what were you doing during the time? And he said he was doing yoga and listening. Um, so it's if there's not anybody chill, I don't know if Iserman's not chill, I don't know who is at that point.
Right, exactly. And how mental professional sports can be. That kind of reminds me of a story back in a long time ago when the Montreal Expos were still around, and I knew one of their scouts, and he had a great way of sifting out the people that he wanted. And what he would do is he'd bring some of his minor league guys, the ones that'll probably throw 91, 92, and
Hmm.
he'll he'll stand all of the people who want to try out on the foul line right there, and he'll have his guys right there on the bullpen mounds throw a couple fastballs, throw a couple pitches, and he would have asked the guys, "Hey, how many of you guys think you can outpitch these two right here?" And they were all sitting down, and a couple of them stood up, and they're like, "All right, y'all come over here. The rest of y'all have a nice day."
I mean, there's a great deal of confidence and confidence and potential and things like that. The kind of the mental game, mental preparation is part of that too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a psychological thing more than it is anything else. Especially, baseball, what, 90% mental, 10% physical.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not able to, you know, I mean, it wasn't even like how many of you guys are going to beat or can pitch harder than these guys. It's, you know, how many do you think can? And if you don't think you if you don't think you can, you're not going to go out there and face somebody like a Cody Bellinger and think you can strike him out.
Right. And my thinking always was, because they were so obsessed with the radar gun wherever I played, they're like, well, it's good that if you hit like 85 or 90, I'm like, well, what does it matter if the scoreboards are showing zeros all the way across? Isn't that the whole point of the game? It doesn't matter how hard I throw. If I can get you out, I'm just as good as the guy who's throwing 90.
Oh, certainly, yeah, for sure. It's like if you think about guys like you know Steve Sparks, Tim Wakefield, that could throw a knuckleball up there at like you know 70
R-
miles an hour and still strike
R.A.
guys
Dickey.
out. R.A.
Yeah.
Dickey, yeah, you get no hitters. Um, I
And
think that
yeah, and
even
it's
some
like,
of the. I'm sorry.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. Oh no, you go
I
ahead.
was just I was just gonna say, and you've seen one of my favorite things to watch is when a guy will come up there and throw an ephus pitch at like 60 miles an hour, and that'll get somebody out because they're not expecting him to see a pitch up there at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, and the good thing about R.A. Dickey is that he was never bred as a knuckleball pitcher. His fastball just wasn't working that well, and then when he was in the minor leagues, he adjusted a little bit. So that's how he was able to, you know, change his entire style.
Certainly, absolutely, and it's gonna it is interesting to see how people change their styles and their game mechanics as time goes on. I mean, who would have thought that in the middle of his career, John Smoltz would become a lights out closer for a while, you know,
Right.
and and get as many saves as he did, in addition to the number of wins he got as a starting pitcher. I think that that's a really interesting thing that
Right.
you don't see very often.
And because people don't understand the difference between relievers and starters, I mean those are two different regimens right there. I mean you have to, you know, when you talk about what AJ Minter did tonight at the same time, being able to throw 3 innings when, when the program that he works only, keeps him in shape to work 1 or 2. So for him to strike out 7 in 3 innings was phenomenal.
Right? And I'm pulling up his numbers again just because that I mean that can't be understated, and to do all of that, to strike out seven batters on 42 pitches, 27 of which were strikes. That's pretty lights out stuff, really.
Yeah, and he could have gone another inning or two because I do believe Seager was up next inning, but they used Matzik instead, and we all know what happened there. Matzik, decided to go yard, which was a catchable ball.
And I think that the nasty appearance from Will Smith, the pitcher, where he threw less than 50% strikes. And, the good news is for somebody like Smith, that was that's an anomaly more than a rule, but
Right.
it's not an anomaly you want in the middle innings of a potential series clinching game.
Right. And I think that Snicker kind of pulled the trigger a little too early on Matzik. He could have gone another couple hitters. His curveball was starting working, and it could have pushed Shane Green back a little bit. So where you wouldn't have to use Will Smith in that kind of situation in the sixth inning, you could have saved him for the seventh. Different part of the order, but I do believe though if Smith got Smith instead of allowing that 3-run homer, this series could be over right now. Because that home run got that offense going for the Dodgers, and they were able to relax. That 2-run lead kind of gave them that. We're up right now, so we kind of just swing a little bit more freely, and then next thing you know, Seager hits another bomb, and it was a cakewalk from there on out for that Dodgers offense, and it started with that one at bat.
I would be more concerned about the Braves' future in this series if if that 6-run, the 6 runs in the sixth and the seventh inning had continued to materialize, but they handed the ball to Josh Tomlin, who again is another one who had started his career as a starter in Cleveland, but handed it to him, and he gave up one hit and struck out two in 2 innings pitch. I think that the fact that they were able to shut it back down, even though they lost the game, and lead and and kind of get a couple of scoreless innings in there helps them more than giving up 7 runs and winning and squeaking by one.
Yeah, so this was, and this was one of those low percentage games where you felt like you didn't really have a chance, but then when you got through 3 innings, you're like, there is a
Yeah.
chance. Our offense got stalled because of Ozuna, but we still have a 2-0 lead, and our pitchers are still, or they're still working it. But it didn't work out that way. I mean, the Dodgers, it was a game they should win, and they did win. But tomorrow's a game that we should win because
Right.
of the fact that we have completely taxed that Dodger bullpen for one, and the fact that they still need a good outing out of Buehler. Um, and we know that Kershaw's not going to pitch Game 7 because of how his back is, and at the same time being on 2 nights of rest, it's just it's either Gonsolin or Urias, and the Braves can handle both of those guys if they have to, and I like the pitching matchups. I really do
Yeah,
for Atlanta.
I do. I had to. I have at least a degree of familiarity with most of the Dodgers starting pitchers. But Gonsolin was one that I had when I heard he was pitching. I'm like, who in the heck is that? That
Yeah.
was the one I was most miffed on out of
So
that group.
so here's the question for you: where do the Dodgers stand in this series if they had not gotten rid of Hyunjin Ryu or Kenta Maeda?
If either one of those two players were here, I think that we'd be talking about something a whole lot different than what we're talking about now.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I think it would be a 5-game series for the Dodgers easily. But this isn't the same team as it was in 18 and 17.
and that was kind of the price that the Dodgers paid to get Mookie Betts. And Betts pitched, and I mean Betts has pitched, or player Betts obviously made that great play tonight, but the question is it a $325 million play?
Right.
Uh, and for a Dodger team that has come so close but so far for the last 4 or 5 years, if is $325 million going to be worth getting out in a 6 or 7 game NLCS?
Yeah.
Um, I found myself, I think, in a conversation with you at one point. I questioned the potential of I question the potential of Dave Roberts' managerial career, and how hot his seat was,
Right.
and as I think about it further, I'm wondering if the seat isn't hotter underneath Andrew Friedman and the guys in the personnel, or the president and managers or general manager's office.
Right.
You wait, you especially if you know a weakened pitching rotation costs them the series, especially if Betts doesn't provide $325 million worth of value. You know that's where the seat may be hotter.
And can you imagine if Betts was actually on his game this entire series? Because I do believe the only 2 wins that the Dodgers have are the only games that Betts has a hit in. He's a table setter. I mean, when you take him out, Justin Turner's been hitting the ball really well. So, can you imagine how he has 0 RBIs, I believe, this series? Can you imagine how many he would have had if Betts was getting on base in front of him?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a lot of so much of baseball has to do with momentum and setting the table and pardon me, all of that.
Right. And one thing I looked at tonight when it came to killing momentum, when it came to that play where Ozuna left the bag, they were talking about how there were so many players in front of him. There's a runner on second. You had, I think, yeah, you had the shortstop Seager in front of him, and so they said, well, he may have been blocked. Well, in that case, where's Ron Washington in that situation? Because he would have had the better angle on that. He would have been like, you know, go catch whatever.
Yeah,
So I think that falls on the coaching a little bit just as much as it does Ozuna, because Ron Washington is that extra set of eyes if Ozuna couldn't see.
right. So I think that I think that Washington obviously has done great things for the Braves, and you know for Schnitker to have a staff that has two former major league managers and extra sets of eyes in Walt Weiss and Ron Washington. I mean, obviously neither one of them had. I mean, Washington had a great deal of success in Texas, but Walt Weiss didn't have a whole lot of success in Colorado. But Washington's been a great voice, but I think that he should have, there's got to be some degree of responsibility that falls to him to make sure that Ozuna's, keeping an eye on that he's keeping an eye on what Ozuna's situation is and what Ozuna may not be able to see.
Because at that point, it would be 3-0, and you're still batting in the bottom of the third. I mean, the momentum continues to build at that point, and right there, it just stops it right there. And then the very next batter, Corey Seager, next inning, hits one over the center field fence, and that's when I felt that shift. And it's like, oh boy, we need to score now. But the
Yeah,
offense was, at that point stalled.
yeah, I think that again, momentum is the big key to winning a game, and I think that they obviously stalled. Just that one kind of mental error just really stalled things for them. I mean, was actually confused because, like I said, I was only kind of following the game through updates and through live casts and things like that. And I looked down, and it was 3-1 Braves or 3-0 Braves, and then all of a sudden it was 2-0, and I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, I know that defense is good, but I didn't know that there was negative runs. I
Right.
didn't know that could happen.
Right.
I'm like, so I had to go in and find out what in the heck happened. So that's when I ended up seeing the play. But um, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
just,
we
yeah.
um, yeah, it'll be it. So I mean, obviously tomorrow should be interesting. Tomorrow should be a very big game. I think that my prediction is going to be the Braves win tomorrow night. We're sitting
Yeah.
here this time tomorrow talking about some
A World
about the
Series
World
match.
about the World Series, yeah, and obviously we'll know both sides of the matchup by that point or
Yep.
by late tomorrow night.
Right.
Um, so I think we'll be talking World Series tomorrow night. I think that the Dodgers luck will run out, and I think that the city. I mean, we were talking about averages and how Acuna couldn't, Acuna's slow bat and the other slow bats on the Braves roster. we're eventually going to heat up just by the law of averages. The law of averages worked against the city of Atlanta and Georgia sports for a long time.
Too long. But you've got a veteran on that team that I think, in Pablo Sandoval, who's done this 3 times,
Right.
and he's been through this. And I think he's kind of helping with this culture right now in the postseason. Because I think if you don't have a guy like him who can kind of keep these guys, calm and level-headed on an even keel, I mean, who knows if the Braves are up at 3 games to 2 at this point. But
I
yeah,
mean, I think obviously, I think the veterans that the Braves have been so key to a lot of things. I mean, it would be easy for Ronald Acuna, who is kind of the next generation star of that team, to become frustrated as he, became the target for Marlins throwing practice off and on over the last couple of years.
oh yeah,
It would be easy for him to get frustrated and angry and unprofessional and all of those things, but he's kept his head, and the couple of times that he's been benched, or that he's been benched for making unprofessional or showboating type moves, and the thing when Snit has set him down, he's responded to that, and
right.
as opposed to becoming a diva, or becoming frustrated by it. So I think that the mix of young and old is perfect for the Braves.
Yeah, and tomorrow I'm going to be looking for, how Ozuna responds, because that error on the base path is going to be sticking in his head all night, and he's going to be looking to wash that bad taste out of his mouth. So a big game may be in store for him. So this team's too good to lose 3 in a row, and there really is no panic after tonight. We knew that, you know, games 3, 4, and 5, you know, everyone thought LA was going to take it. It's kind of like watching the election in a way, when you're like, oh, you
Right.
need this state, this state, this state, to win the electoral college to get to the 270. Well, to us, it feels like, the Braves stole some of the Dodgers states when they won Game 4 against Kershaw, because they had no business winning it, apparently.
Right.
And, and that, in turn, didn't set us up, like I said, for Game 5. It sets us up perfectly for these next 2 games if we had to play these 2 games. So, even though the Braves lost, I'm still sitting here smiling. I know what's coming. So if the
Oh
Dodgers
yeah.
beat if the Dodgers beat that, then more power to them. They've earned that right to be there. But right now, everything, all the chips are in Atlanta's corner when it comes to the long term of this series.
Yeah, I am ready to, I was really hoping that this broadcast, I've been planning this broadcast all day. I was really hoping that we'd be talking World Series tonight, but that's part of the plan. I guess it's part of the plan. And, you know, again, like you said, there's really set up to, again, give us that conversation over the next couple of days.
Right.
Um, so, uh, do you have any final thoughts, or final comments, concerns?
Let's see. Tomorrow, you got to hit Bueller early. You don't want them to settle in. And I think the quicker that we can get later into the game, the more that it'll benefit us. Got to work the pitch count, and just, kind of do, especially for Acuna, or because he's been swinging first pitch a
Right.
lot. He needs to set the tone tomorrow, because again, the Braves are going to be the away team. Put the pressure on early and don't let up. Especially if you give Max 3 to lead, can imagine the confidence that's going to give him, especially lefties, not handling them very well. So I mean, it's still in our court, and I think we're going to be all right.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm actually going to say that whatever's been troubling Acuna from a batting perspective, I'm going to predict that he's gonna break out of that tomorrow. I'm going to predict a Braves win. I'm going to predict a really solid performance from Max Fried, uh, and I'm going to predict that we'll be talking pennant. this
Yep.
time tomorrow.
Yep. I still predicted a homer for Acuna. I still think he'll hit second deck left field. And at the same time, if Fried goes 7 and leaves with the lead, the series is over.
So we'll see. We'll see how well this ages in 24 hours or so.
Yep.
As in, we'll be talking World Series matchup hopefully this time tomorrow. Uh, Danny, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. We'll do it again tomorrow, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and for those of you watching us, thank you for feeling us out through our technical adjustments. And thank you for watching the closers. We'll check you out tomorrow.